Hi folks, welcome to the Economic Reality Channel. My name is Kurt. Thanks for being here. Today is Tuesday, November something, prior to Thanksgiving, and it's been a while since I posted a video, but I was down in Florida visiting some friends and family, and that was a good time. So I'm back up here in the beautiful North Georgia, Southwest North Carolina area, which I consider home, and I'm blessed to be back. I actually have the luxury of staying in a friend's fifth wheel camper, and it's on a creek, and it's very peaceful, and I've met some new people, and it's amazing how different, smart, uh, these types of people are. The lady next door is a retired school teacher. She taught high level education and has an IQ of probably more than me and you. But nonetheless, I digress. So I'm back up here, and I had a good time, and accomplished a few things, got some things lined up, and got a few things that are really just concerning me. And so in my past videos, I've kind of referenced the fear and greed index. This is kind of created from CNN, I believe. And while I don't put a lot of stock in CNN, this fear greed index as it relates to the markets is pretty accurate, I believe. And I took a screenshot over the weekend, and it had the fear and greed index at extreme fear greed, or I'm sorry, extreme fear 8. And, I ask why, if everything is going well, the market's finished up today. Gold and silver finished pretty flat. Gold around 4,100, silver around $51, and crypto down just a little bit. But the markets continue to seem stable. And I ask you, why, if the markets are stable, would you see extreme fear on this fear greed index? And I've kind of explained my thoughts on it. Is it's because it's all debt, it's leveraged, it's margin debt, and none of this stuff is real. I mean, I know that sounds Alex Jones tinfoil hat, but man, so much of this market is leverage, not just from, the average person. I'm talking about institutional investors, hedge funds, pension funds. The global economy is invested in our stock market because it's the cleanest shirt in the dirty clothes basket, and that's why it continues to stay propped up until it doesn't. So I'll explain. This is what they explain the fear and greed index as. The fear and greed index is a way to gauge stock market movements and whether stocks are fairly priced. The theory is based on the logic that excessive fear tends to drive down share prices, and too much greed tends to have the opposite effect. Well, if fear is driving down share prices, why are we seeing, record stock market prices, valuations every day? And a lot of that has to do with the AI and the tech bubble that we're in. And I do believe it's a bubble. And, you can take the 10 top AI tech stocks out of the equation, and you'll see that the stock market is not performing. I saw an article recently that talked about, the S&P 500, the top 500 companies traded on the U.S. Index, and 80% of them mentioned or talked about AI as being a priority in their annual calls. So AI and tech is obviously becoming the driving force, not only in markets, but in our spending habits. And that's something I'll get into as well. Another index that I pay attention to is the Consumer Confidence Index, and you can find this pretty much anywhere. And as you can see, we're somewhere not quite at COVID levels in confidence, but there's a lot of room to go down. Back in 2009, we reached a low, and it still seems like the consumer is, believing that things are on an upward trajectory. Maybe things are improving. I just don't see it, and I'm trying to wrap my head around where this index gets their info. But nonetheless, there's room for devaluation in that. And part of that is from what I see coming with the U.S. economy. Back in COVID 2020, we borrowed a ton of money. The U.S. government went ballistic on handing out free money, stimmy checks, injecting money into the banking system to keep the banks afloat. And I'm starting to see that again, and you can already see the warning signs with the replacement of Fed Chair Powell coming February 1st, and the guy they have in place for him is handpicked by Trump, and I'm sure it's designed to drive interest rates, down. And I get it that people think that when the government says we're going to get interest rates down, it's to help us, you and me, maybe find a better mortgage, maybe, finance that new car purchase a little cheaper. Has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with them printing new money. I have the national debt clock pinned to my browser, and I can go to it daily, and sometimes I forget to go to it for a day or two, and I can pull it up, and then I hit refresh, and it'll go, because it's constantly ticking, and it'll go from a number to like 200 billion more when I refresh. So there's been new money printed, and just in the since the weekend, the Fed has printed what I'm hearing estimated at $150 billion. And, keep in mind that this, government shutdown ended, but it only bought us time to January 31st. And that's when the next government shutdown potentially can happen. We have a new Fed chair coming in February 1st, who is most likely going to, drive interest rates down. And I know that sounds great, but it's the same thing that got us into the problem during COVID. We had like near zero interest rates during COVID. And what do I mean when I say that? So when the federal government needs money, they call up the Federal Reserve, which is not federal and have no reserves and is not tied to the government. They're not They're not elected officials. It's just a conglomerate of central banks that control our money supply, control interest rates. And so when they go to the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve will, print that, $500 billion, you know, treasury or money supply. And then the U.S. Treasury prints these treasury notes to borrow that money. And those treasury notes can be in the form of a 10-year treasury, which has, been historically what, the U.S. borrows on. And then they can sell those in the open market, and other countries can buy them or decide not to. But the U.S. federal government can print treasuries in 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, 2-year, 6-month, 1-month treasury bills. And all of them have a lower interest rate. So what's been happening over the last, I'd say, decade or more is when the federal government borrows money, they borrow it at the cheapest interest rate as possible. And that could be the 6-month T-bill, which means that in 6 months, that debt is rolled over into a new interest rate. So as rates climb, that short-term debt increases in interest. And we've reached a point where, we can't even afford the interest. We're paying, $1.2 trillion of interest on our debt. And the more we borrow at a higher rate, the more that interest payment becomes. And the shorter the term, the more that interest payment becomes. So just to give you an idea, back in 2020, all these treasury notes were about 4 times less expensive, which means that, in 2020, this one graph, the U.S. 10-year note bond yield was below 1%. And today, it's at 4%. And so every dollar that gets created today is 4 times more expensive. I don't care if it's in the 10-year or the 6-month or the 3-year or the 5-year, 30-year bond. All of them are 4 times more expensive. So all that Trump cares about is getting those interest rates lowered so that they can get on to a spending spree. And that's what concerns me, is because back then we saw the challenges that was created from all the money printing in 2020, 2021. Excuse me. And it drove us into, the inflationary crisis that we have today, where everything is so expensive. Housing, food, you name it. And that's where they're taking us, because there's a race for this AI creation. And I've talked about it in past videos, these data centers. Um, the race for this AI, super AI, I should say, is there's no holds barred. Yeah, they are ready to print as much money as needed to win this AI race with China. And unfortunately, we have been behind the eight ball for quite some time. We're not prepared for this AI energy race, this super AI race. And I think that this winter is going to expose a lot of, where am I at? Oh gosh, I got to shorten this. Is going to expose why we're not prepared, because I think we're going to see an extremely cold winter. The as the weather forecast that I'm seeing is that we're going to see just this weekend alone and Thanksgiving weekend record snowfall in the Northeast and the Midwest. And so I think we're going to really test the grid this year with all the advancement in AI and these data centers. Who comes first? Who's left without? And I think it's going to be a breaking point for us. I think a lot of things are going to change. So this a lot of things are happening with the AI within our government. Potential government shutdown January 30th. New Fed chairman February 1st. A lot of money creation between now and then. You know, the government's going to go on recess, and you know, there's not going to be any new bills passed. So it's going to be all executive orders. And I've seen, you know, things that are so concerning. You know, you got the New York mayor in the White House, Mondami or whatever, the socialist communist who, you know, was basically, you know, had the red carpet rolled out for him. And you know, don't tell me this is 4D chess. This is BS. And then you had, you know, prior to that, you had the ISIS head chopper, the leader of Syria, gosh, I can't think of his name, but the new leader of Syria, who was in the Oval shaking hands with the president, and the president gave him full support. I'm not understanding why these types of things are going on when so many people here in America are struggling. And I'm just thinking that there's something that they're working on, something that's going to happen that they can blame on someone else. And this peace deal with Russia and Ukraine is not anything close to being realistic. The U.S. just dropped over the weekend via plane or helicopter or something. I heard reports that they dropped these leaflets that basically, you know, was telling the Venezuelan people to leave the area for your own safety, kind of thing. So that's about to escalate. You know, it just seems like we're in this point in time where everything's on a razor's edge. Imagine yourself, on a tile floor, and you've kind of painted all the tiles, and you're on that last tile, and where do you go? Um, how do you get from here to there without just effing everything up? You just can't. And I think that's kind of where we are. But as we continue to increase debt, I printed off this little chart, and it kind of showed the last 10 years. Excuse me. From 2015 to 2025. And it basically shows where our debt has gone. And from 2015, we were $18 trillion in debt. Oil prices fell. 2016, 19.5 Brexit. 2017, 20 trillion. Congress raised the debt ceiling. 2018, 21 trillion. Trump tax cuts. 2019, 22.7 trillion. Trade wars. 2020, 27 trillion. COVID-19 and recession. 2021, 28 trillion. COVID-19. 2022, 31 trillion. Inflation Reduction Act. 2023, 33 trillion. Rise in interest rates. Again, this is exactly what we're about to experience once again. 2024, 35.5 trillion. Credit rating downgraded. We got downgraded in our credit score internationally by the Monetary Fund. And 2025, 36 trillion, 215 billion. One big, beautiful bill signed into law. And we're actually at $37.3 billion today. So we're not even done with 2025, and we're pushing $38 trillion. So my point is, in 2015, our national debt was $18 trillion. 10 years later, it's more than double. More than double. So when you start understanding hyperinflation and how the system works, the time frame from which debt increases and the dollar debases, expands exponentially over time, it becomes much shorter and shorter and shorter. So the time frame from doubling the debt can go from 10 years to 5 years to 3 years to 1 year to almost daily. And that's how empires lose their value. And if you want to understand a little bit more, I would recommend a book called Creatures from Jekyll Island by G. Gordon Griffin. If you want to if it's a horror story. I mean, if you want to understand, central bank monetary policy, read that book, because that will, if that doesn't open your eyes, nothing will. This was set up in 1913, long time ago, by the central banks, and it's on par to do exactly what it was supposed to do and move us into that next phase, which is the Great Reset. And that's what I'm going to focus on future videos, because I do think that all the pieces are being put in place to reset us into that digital ID, that digital dollar, especially with the changing of the Fed, the head of the Fed, the guy they're putting in. Um, so there's a lot of changes that are coming to our monetary policy. So Creatures of Jekyll Island. I would also recommend looking at modern monetary policy, um, which was created to support fractional reserve banking. That's what our banking system is set up on. Um, Modern money mechanics. That's the actual thing. Modern money mechanics. But there's a lot of information out there, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom. I'm thankful for what I have, and I'm starting a new venture January 2nd, and I hope it becomes profitable and becomes something that I can invest my time in. But you just got to really kind of pay attention to what the government is telling us, because when they tell us that, you know, we're working on the middle class, and, we have all these great ideas that, are going to help you and me, this stimmy check that no one's heard or seen anything about. All these great, tariffs. We're looking at, you know, Trump just came out last week. I'm going on a tangent. I'm sorry. I'm 26 minutes into it. I don't give a damn. Trump came out 10 days ago and bragged about the meeting with Japan. All right. And how Japan was going to invest, what was it? 250, 350 billion dollars into our energy infrastructure. Japan, they're in the worst financial crisis than we could ever imagine. I mean, Japan right now, their bond market is in chaos. They're zero, they're ZERP. There's zero interest rate policy. They're printing money at 0%. Their GDP is two and a half, three, 250, 300% of their GDP. So, this is the company, this is the country that's gonna save us and invest in our critical energy infrastructure that we're so far behind on. No, stop. These are talking points. These are things that they throw out in the mainstream media to make it seem like we're doing something good. None of it has anything to do with you or me. And the fact that Japan is coming to our rescue is a joke, all of it in itself. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. Their people are struggling and their economy sucks. And yet somehow we brag that they're going to invest, $250 billion into our energy infrastructure is laughable at best. They're doing everything they can. They just got a new prime minister who, the people thought was going to, try to raise rates and drive inflation down, and just the opposite. He's in the money printing game too. All these countries around the world are just printing money hand over fist. Nobody is in a sound economic situation. And the race for AI is between the United States and China, and it will continue. And our leaders will throw every borrowed dollar they can get their hands on at this AI race at no expense to you or me. So when winter comes and those power bills go up and everything gets a little bit more challenging, you can know that has nothing to do with you or me and everything to do with the top 10%. Because this last chart I have, and when I just want to explain that when they refer to the middle class, there is no more middle class. The middle class has been evaporated. We have the top 1%, and then we have the top 10%, and then the bottom 90% is the lower class. The top, excuse me, 10% represents the middle class. And I can show you, it's just a matter of dollars and cents. We do not have a functioning middle class anymore. It's the top 10% and the bottom 90% that is represented. So the wealth gap has severely expanded over the last 10, 20, 30 years. And, when they start, when you hear these reports about the middle class and how we're doing this to help the middle class, no, it's BS. There is no middle class. The middle class is the upper 10%, and everything else is below. So I just, well, I guess I'll leave it there. I didn't want this to be a doom and gloomer or actually run to 32, 33 minutes, but had a lot on my mind. I'm thankful for where I am. I got some new projects coming up. I'm gonna focus on those, and hopefully they turn into something beneficial, profitable. But yeah, just do your best through the holiday weekend. This Thanksgiving leading into Christmas. I wish everybody a great Thanksgiving. Be thankful for the things you do have. And I'll point out, not for any other reason, not for, bonus points, but, I was at the Ingles where I am, and the lady in front of me, older lady, looked really, obviously on fixed income and couldn't, she was up there in age, and I could tell she was, just by her purchases, she was very conscientious to what she was buying. And it wasn't much, but, she was, nonetheless a sweet lady. And I had the opportunity to, ask her if it was okay that I paid for her groceries. And I tell you, it's, I didn't have any cameras set up. I wasn't looking for any gratitude. In fact, I hesitated because I didn't want any attention whatsoever. But I was able to, get her weekly groceries purchased, and she was very thankful, and we had a chance to talk for a few minutes. And very sweet lady, on a fixed income, doing her best. And so I say that not to, pat myself on the back, but, I say it to help, maybe someone understand that, however it is, we can help our neighbors, help our fellow citizens. We're all in this together. It's not easy. It's, going to be more difficult as the winter progresses. So any chance you have to help someone, I encourage you to do so, and do it in the right spirit, because I didn't want any attention. I just wanted to help this lady out, and I felt like she could use it, and that was a blessing for me. So I wish you all the best through Thanksgiving. God bless. Thanks for being here. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks.